Welcome to our 5 on 5. We're pleased to be joined by Colin Mullane from the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. Colin, good to see you again. How are you today?
Greg. Excellent, thank you.
All right, so let's start looking back, and we got a new year, but let's first start by looking back on the 2013 housing market locally. What are we seeing? Where are we moving?
Well, 2013 was a really interesting year, Craig. We had the first return to what we would consider a more normal market in 5 or 6 years. We have been seeing inventory levels drop for the last 5 years, and we've been waiting for that year where they would drop to so low that the buyer demand would actually start to stabilize pricing and indeed see it increase. And as a matter of fact, for Jackson County last year, the median sale price rose 17 to 18% across the county, which is a really healthy number, and I think fairly largely exceeded expectations.
Wow. So are we moving closer to the area where we're at, you know, when the bubble burst? Are we almost to that point, or we still have some ground to make up?
There's still some ground to be made up, but I think that was a huge inroads that we made in a one-year period. And I don't know that we're anticipating that big of an increase in 2014 or anything close to that, but it was a really welcome relief for a lot of homeowners that were right on the edge, maybe heading towards a short sale or a foreclosure, that were finally maybe above water again, can refinance out of it if they've been responsible with their mortgage, and there's some light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people. Yeah,
that's quite a big jump. We can only hope moving forward. But what are you looking to this year? What do you hope happens? What do you think will happen?
Well, we saw a little bit of a slowdown towards the end of 2013. A lot of that was to do with the increase in interest rates. We're now hovering at a little bit over 4.5% for a conventional 30-year mortgage. This time last year, we were as low as 3%. So that's a big increase. We've also seen a return to the marketplace of conventional sellers. In other words, non-distressed properties. They're not foreclosures. They're not short sales. And that really brings the inventory level back up. And so buyers will have more to choose from, hopefully, in 2014, which will take some of the pressure off. We saw a lot of multiple offers going on towards the end of 2013. Buyers getting frustrated because they weren't able to find a house that worked for them at a price that worked with the interest rate they wanted. So we'll see 2014, hopefully, with a higher inventory level as sellers come back into the marketplace, able to recoup some of the losses that they would have had over the last 5 or 6 years, and maybe able to move on with whatever's next in store for their lives. But still some good deals out there for buyers.
Very good. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I definitely want to talk about down payments.
Okay.
All right. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. We're getting here with Colin Mullane, the spokesperson for the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. So, Colin, we talked about rates in part one of the interview. What about down payments? What are the current requirements as far as the down payment goes?
Well, Craig, still currently buyers have access to fairly low down payment assistance programs, or down payments in general, like the Federal Housing Administration FHA loans allow as little as 3.5% down. That being said, with a much bigger caveat than years gone by, you can still access the lower rate, but there's now so much prepaid, preloaded fees that go into that loan that it actually equates to a much higher percentage rate if you look at it over the 30-year period. So FHA has always been somewhat of an affordable home program. It's no longer as much as it used to be through the tougher times. But there's also a big move as part of the Dodd-Frank Act to come up with a qualified residential mortgage definition. And a lot of folks are really believing that a minimum 20% down payment requirement would be something that would be good for the marketplace. And when you consider that upwards of 42% of all homeowners utilize lower down payments, that would be a huge drag on the local housing economy if everyone was required to have 20% down payment. And the myth behind that, and the reason it's not as healthy as people suggest, on the front, it sounds really good. Everyone should have 20% down.
Sure.
But if you look at some of the better performing loans through the really tough times, a lot of those were lower down payment assistance programs. And they performed well because they were qualified to a much higher standard. So qualify the buyer. Don't penalize them up front with a higher down payment. So we're really continuing to work with some of our federal legislators, making sure they're listening to the realtors in the field that understand their buyers and say, look, qualify them. Make sure they can make the repayment, but don't get so caught up in this 20% number because you could really do some damage to the housing market as it starts to recover. Interesting.
Okay. All right. Now, talking about Rogue Valley Association of Realtors serves Jackson County. What individual city markets, what have you seen in those? Anything interesting?
Something very interesting in 2013, as a matter of fact. We saw a big resurgence in the number of people moving in from out of state, particularly to the Ashland market. And the Ashland market was the only market last year that actually sold more than they did in 2012. Now, that doesn't mean that the rest of the county didn't do well. It just means that the inventory wasn't there to meet the demand, and Ashland had the inventory levels. And we've seen a lot of our traditional markets moving from Washington, the Bay Area, that move here typically as retirees, are now doing that again to a much higher degree than they were in 2012 and 2011. And so it's a much healthier decision for them to make this time around, coming from the markets they're coming from, and Ashland really benefited from that in 2013.
Very good, Colin. Great to see you. Thanks for coming.
Always good to see you. Thank you.
Too. Stay with us. We'll be right back.